Welcome to part 2 of the series about my book, The Single Plane Golf Swing, Play Better Golf, the Moe Norman Way. I'm going to go through chapter 5 and 6 today, but I want to have a quick discussion in chapter 5 about some discoveries I made in Moe's swing that I think will help you understand why we go through the instructional material that you're going to see in this review. Now, if you're interested in this content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click that little bell icon so you get notifications every time that I post a new video. So chapter 5, what we discuss in chapter 5 is the discovery of what I call the pivot point. Now, here's what I see, and I want to talk to you about where this comes from and why it's so important to understand the pivot point because of this. If you look at the most important aspect of a golf swing, if you ask the question, why was Moe Norman one of the greatest or the greatest ball striker to ever play the game? He's like Lee Trevino was a great ball striker, Ben Hogan was a great ball striker, then you have Moe Norman, the greatest ball striker ever to play the game. If you're going to be a great ball striker, you've got to simplify an important moment, which you all know is impact. We have to become great at the moment of impact. So if you study impact, and this is what's really important about Moe's swing, is the question and the answer is, if you can consistently get to the ideal impact position, you can be a consistent great ball striker. And that's what Moe was able to achieve with his single plane swing. So let's look at impact, because this is what, if you can figure out what impact is and then create a golf swing that makes that moment easier, you're solving the equation and you solve what Moe Norman figured out in his discovery of the single plane. But I want to show you what that means. If you look at great ball strikers at impact, and you look at Moe, for example, what you're going to see, and there's two angles I want to study this from with you. I want to study it from a face-on angle, and obviously a down-the-line angle. But let's go face-on first. So when you look straight at a golf swing at impact, and I go here, and I put a player at impact, and you go right to where Moe is, I want you to notice where the club is pointing. It's pointing towards the lead side of the body. All right, so you see that it's not the middle of the body, it's the lead side of the body. And notice the body's tilt, the position of my body to get there. So what you're seeing is the club has a relationship to the lead side of the body. Now that's very important. We're going to talk about this because that allows you to strike a golf ball with the proper shaft position, hit the proper, if you hit the ball fat or if you hit it thin, you're not getting enough of the shaft in front of the golf ball or leading. So there's the lead side of the body. Now, I also want you to notice that when I put myself in this position, notice the alignment of the club and the arm. And that doesn't matter if you have a 5-iron or a driver, you're still going to have the club and arm aligned. But notice the trail arm is in a slightly bent position, and the wrist is in a slightly bent position. So you're seeing this position of the trail arm as the club leans to the lead side of the body. So just remember that reference there. Okay, so that's what I call the pivot point, above the hip, right in this area on the lead side of the body. That's where the club is referencing. That's your relationship to the club. Now, I'm going to go down the line. And when I go down the line, you see that at address, the club also goes through an alignment with this arm, and then it goes through the middle of my back, which we call mid-spine intersect. So what I'm referencing here is that the club, because of the way you're holding the golf club and because of the way you're keeping the club aligned with the arms, you have a club-to-body relationship between you and this golf club. And so here's the answer to simplicity, and this is covered in chapter 5. If we can simplify your golf swing from address to impact with less motion, keeping this club-to-body relationship, we can simplify and make it easier for you to get to impact. This is going to make you a great ball striker, and this was why Moe is so great. So this is what this is all about, is understanding the pivot point. Now I'm going to show you a little demonstration here about the pivot point. I'm going to use my stick because this is the way I discovered this. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this stick, but what I'm going to do is what I did is I grabbed a broomstick. I was watching Moe on video, and I saw Moe, and as he was going into his backswing, I kept drawing a line on the screen. So he would take it at address, he took it to there, and I drew a line. I took it to there, I drew a line, I drew a line, and I drew lines all the way through his backswing. And here's what I noticed, is that in his backswing, as he went back, the club was still pointing to the pivot point. Let me show you. So I grabbed a broomstick, I grabbed it right in the middle, and I just created that lead side relationship. See that? I'm on the lead side relationship. Then I went like this. Then I went like this. I started just turning, and I kept the stick against my body. So from Moe's address, I just turned like that, and I noticed that I was in the exact same position as Moe was. Exact same position. Well, what's interesting about this is notice how, if I even choke down further, see that's going through mid-spine. It doesn't matter where, if I'm hitting a wedge or a driver or a mid-iron, this is going through mid-spine because of the way I'm holding the club, that relationship's always the same. So your golf swing relationship club to body is always the same. It doesn't matter if you're hitting a driver or a wedge. So there would be a driver, there's a wedge, there's a wedge, there's a driver. So it's always the same motion because we have to get the club leading and into impact. So watch what happens now. I'm going to go ahead and go through this kind of backswing, downswing motion with a club to body relationship. So follow me here. So watch. So I'm going to hold the stick, keep my lead side relationship. First push it. Now you notice that I'm at the top of my swing. I've lost it. See, I came away from my side, but watch this. If I unhinge my hands, it hits me in the same spot. So the only difference between here and there is arm fold, hand hinge, but I haven't lost the lead side relationship because when I do this, I come down and I unhinge, lead side relationship again. So I'm building this golf swing. It's not around the center of the body. This is where a lot of people make mistakes. The golf swing is leveraging itself around this side of the body. That's how you produce leverage and speed, and that's how the hands lead. So those of you who release the club early, hit the club fat, flip the club, you haven't developed the lead side relationship to the golf club like Moe had, which gets this club moving more consistently to impact. So that's what this really training is all about, and that's what the single plane swing is all about. So let's start going through the basic principles of Moe's address position so I can nail down with you the fundamentals you see in the book. Now if you go to page 57 of the book, we're looking at the setup, this key differences in Moe's address position. Let's go through these really quickly. Now, the first thing is about how Moe's arms and legs were straight. Now, that's kind of a key difference you see with Moe's swing. His arms are straight and his legs are straight. Now I'm going to ask you a question as we go into this. When your arms and legs are straight, and I asked Moe this question, why are your arms and legs straight? And he goes, what's straighter than straight? And so the answer, what he's really giving me there was, if I'm going to get this perfect every single time, then straight, I can't mess that up, right? It's hard to mess up when you straighten your legs, straighten your arms. So what he did was, he had his legs straight, and he put his arms straight out, and he tilted. So 2 straight lines. And those straight lines formed the lead side relationship. See that? There's a tilt, you need to have the tilt involved. So if you look at the next thing, you're going to see his upper spine was tilted from the ball, right? So his upper spine is tilted away from the ball. See what happens is it's centered now, but it's tilted, Moe tilted. Now look at the club, goes to the lead side of the body. Now, here's the thing about that. Remember what I said earlier in this conversation is that we're trying to get great at impact. Every great player is tilted at the moment of impact, where their body is tilted away from the target. So that tilt's critical. Well, what Moe figured out was that if you have your straight lines and you tilt away, you can simplify the address position so that it simplifies your ability to get to impact. This is all about simplifying your ability to get to impact. All right, so you have his arms pointing directly at the ball as well. And then here's the thing about, and this is why we call it the single plane, is because what you have now is the club shaft is being placed on the same exact plane as impact. So you're creating a spatial relationship. Does that make sense? Because what we're doing here is we're putting the body in the proper relationship distance-wise from the ball. So now, it's width, right? You have to create the space because the club has length to it, your arms have length. And now Moe figured out if my legs are straight and I'm tilted and my arms are straight, I now have the proper spatial relationship from the object I'm hitting. Now I can go back and return that club back to impact, which is why this club is built on a plane. So this is already built into a spatial relationship from the golf ball there. So I have this club plane. So what Moe figured out was, if I put my arm straight out and my leg straight out and I tilt my body, I have the proper club to body impact relationship and the proper space from the golf ball. Now, the other thing too that a lot of people ask questions about is why Moe placed the club up to 5 inches to 12 inches behind the ball. Let's kind of go through this. I get this question a lot, and I'm going to grab my stick again and show you. If I create the lead side relationship, say that's a lead side relationship with my arm, and I tilt, notice that I'm pointing, and it's pointing slightly behind the golf ball. Now watch this. When I rotate my body into impact, it'll point at the ball. So address and impact are different. Why are they different? Because the body is more rotated and forward at impact than it is at address. And that rotation and forward position, the bottom of the swing at address and impact are different. The body, I still have the same relationship, so don't forget that. I still have this relationship, but the body position is changing because of my body rotation, torso rotation. This was absolutely genius because Moe has zero compensations in his movement. He sets up, the club's behind the ball, takes it back, and by the time he gets the body position correct when he comes down, it strikes in a more forward position. So keep in mind the club's slightly behind the ball. And then let's talk about his hand position. So now we have his lead hand position and I discussed this in the last segment. We're going to talk about the grip position here. So the lead hand is in a neutral position. Now, here's what neutral means. If I put my body, I'm going to go back to kind of reset my address, okay? Go into my tilt. Now, I'm going to do it without a club for a second because I want to show you how this works with Moe. So I'm going to go into my address, go into my side, we call the side bend, go into my tilt, put my arm out, and I'm going to stop my shoulder from moving. I'm just going to rotate my hand, my forearm as much as I can. That's a neutral lead hand because I can't go any further than that. That's where Moe placed his lead hand position because now when he comes down and he recreates that lead side relationship, he can rotate this arm as much as possible and the face will be square. So I want you to understand a concept with Moe here. Just like when he said, what's straighter than straight, and that's his way of saying, I am simplifying and refining every aspect of this movement to make it easier to get to impact. He did the exact same thing with forearm rotation because now he has maximized forearm rotation. See that? If I isolate this and this, I'm maximizing forearm rotation. That creates a neutral lead hand because now when he comes down, he maximizes the shoulder position and he can go ahead, see the lead side of relationship. He can release the club and it maximizes forearm rotation and that squares the face perfectly. And just think how consistent you can be if your address position, I call it locking yourself out. If you're locked out in your address and you're maximizing your rotations, you can swing as hard as you want, hit it dead straight. That's the beauty of Moe, the science behind Moe's swing. Now let's go to the next section here and let's talk about the face-on and down-the-line elements here. So let's look at the face-on elements of Moe's address. The first one, we got the neutral lead hand. So let's just make sure we get let me go back through this. This is face-on. This is down the line. So this is kind of the aspect that if you grab a video camera or you're in our coaching program, we will coach you through these elements and look at these different angles of your swing. So we just talked about the neutral lead hand position. Now let's talk about what happens because of the trail hand. So now let's put the trail hand on there. Whenever I have people learn to address the golf ball, I have them put their body into its tilt already. When you talk about address, and this is why I think if the discussions I have about the grip are always, listen, you can't just talk grip. You can't just put the hands on the club because if I put the hands on the club, you have to know where the club face is relative to the lead hand, and you have to know the position of the body to know the rotation of the trail hand. Just by placing the hands on the club does not solve the equation of grip. These are just clamps. These are just things that hold a golf club. When these clamps hold the club, you better know where the face is related, right? So I don't like talking grip that much. I like to place the hands on there in relation to body position. So let's go put the trail hand on there with that in mind. So now that I have the lead hand in its neutral, maxed out rotation with the forearm position, and I have the proper club to body relationship Watch what I do now. My body's already tilted, right? I'm going to bring this hand from underneath. Notice when I do that, the hand goes about to the knee, and I'm going to bring that up. Notice when I bring it up, look at the rotation of the hand. It's not on top, it's coming from underneath. I'm going to overlap, I'm going to wrap it around, and notice now that this hand is in a non-rotational position. Because of the position of my body, this hand can now go like this. See what it's doing? It's working non-rotationally. Absolute genius of Moe Norman. Now I'm going to give you a little science behind this. Dr. Rob Neal with Golf Biodynamics, look him up. He's one of the smartest guys in the room when we talk about the biomechanics of a golf swing. Dr. Neal and I have become friends and done a little bit of research on the golf swings. And when I studied Moe's swing against the average conventional professional player, follow me on this. The average conventional player has approximately 13 degrees of trail hand rotation from address, the moment of address, to impact. Here's what they're doing. So think about this. This hand is rotating. So they're studying just the biomechanics of the hand from the start to impact. So the average conventional golfer, because he doesn't have as much tilt, he's more stood up, the club is pointing more towards the middle of his body, this hand is more on top, he takes it back, he has to rotate this direction. So he's making this happen in the golf swing, right? That's what the conventional swing does. Moe figured it out. Here's what Moe did. Moe said, you know what? I'm going to preset my address. I'm going to go into my tilt. And because of that, this hand no longer has to rotate because of the position of my body. And now I can go back and come down because I'm already in a non-rotational position and I got a neutral lead hand. So let me ask you this. I'm going to put the club down for 1 second. This is what should make so much common sense for you as you go through the single point swing, you start relearning this. If you put yourself in a pre-tilted position and you have this hand neutral, all you're doing to hit a golf ball is this. It's like hammering a nail, but now I'm going to put the lead hand on there. It's this. See that? Which is easier? This, where you go back and then tilt and then come down, or this, where you're already tilted coming down, right? So the question is, you've eliminated tilt and rotation. You've simplified your ability, which is where we started the conversation, to go from address all the way to impact. The lead foot. Let's talk about the lead foot. Now, when we set up our address position, we put the lead foot. We're anticipating the fact that we need stability in the downswing. So you want to make sure the lead foot is rotated out. Now, I talk a lot about lead foot. And the reason is because the lead foot has a lot to do with the position of the pelvis, but how the knees work. And if you want stability, you got to have a flex lead knee. Now, a lot of teachers out there, and this is a little bit of controversy here, but a lot of teachers don't pay much attention to the feet. And they just let you set up with your feet straight. I think this is the worst thing, one of the worst things you can learn in golf, because when you put your feet straight out like this, it's very difficult to rotate the pelvis, and you put a lot of stress. If you're having stress in your lead hip, your body, if you're having stress in your back, sometimes it's related to not having rotation in this foot. So what I want you to do is go ahead and rotate the foot out, and it's probably about, if that was 90, that's 45, it's about 30 degrees of rotation, 25 to 30. And now, see that? How I'm able to move into that lead foot. So I want the foot rotated. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you where the club now. Let's go back into this address position. Actually, I'm going to do this with a driver so you can see all of this. Let me go ahead and just set up here. And I don't have a tee, but it doesn't matter. So I want you to see this with a driver, because I was doing that with a 6-iron previously. Notice how now you're seeing the club shaft lining up to the lead side of my body because of the tilt, not the middle of the body, lead side of the body. Lead arm alignment with the club. And there's that lead arm alignment, bring the trail hand in. And now you see this space between the club and the ball, but you also see how the nice alignment with the club and the body create this lead side relationship. If I go down the line, you also see me, same thing here. You see alignment with the lead arm and the club. Now watch this. This forms the alignment with the trail arm and the club, which is where I'm going to be at impact. So now you see those two alignments from a face on and down the line standpoint. Now, what I want you to do, I'm going to end it here for today's segment. It's a long segment. Address position is so critically important. We have to get the address position correct. One of the things I used to say in my golf schools is I teach grip and address. I teach the whole address position, and then people go away. They kind of take it for granted, and then they come back and I teach them grip and address again, because this whole unit that you got to create an address, this is what's simplifying your ability to get to impact. So in summary today, what we covered is half of chapter 5 and half of chapter 6. And what we're talking about here is making sure that we're getting a pre-impact setup. In other words, we're setting up, creating our alignment, creating our trail hand position. We've maximized this rotation. We have put this in a non-rotational position. We're able to now accomplish impact with less movement, less rotation, and less stress. That's today's lesson. I want you to go, give it a shot, get your address position, make sure your lead foot's turned out. Oh, and one final note here, the trail foot. If we talk about the lead foot, we probably should talk about the trail foot. The trail foot, Mo, I used to ask Mo this, I go, how do you want the trail foot position? He said, like you walk. So if you walk straight like this, what we're going to do is we're going to be stabilizing against the inside of the leg. You don't want the foot turned out because it creates instability. So we want this one pretty straight and this one turned out. In the next segment, we're going to start talking about how the hands and wrists work and how the arms work, and even get into the backswing. Just remember, if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because you want to be notified, because we're going to do 4 more segments on my book called The Single Plane Golf Swing, Play Better Golf the Moe Norman Way.